There's a cruel myth that keeps whispering in the ears of those who grow older, that dreams have an expiration date, that there's an age when it no longer makes sense to want, to desire, to plan, that at 70, 80, or 90, all that remains is to remember what once was. But the truth, proven by science and lived out by thousands of real people, is something else entirely. Time doesn't erase dreams. It simply tucks them into a quieter corner of the soul, waiting for the right moment to be awakened. And that moment could be now, at any instant, because living isn't a privilege reserved for the young. Living is a choice, and dreaming is the spark that reignites that will. In the quiet hallways of geriatric hospitals, in community centers or local parks, the difference between elders who are merely surviving and those who live with a twinkle in their eyes is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of purpose. In 2014, a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association followed more than 7,000 older adults and found that those with a strong sense of purpose had a 30% lower risk of early death, regardless of income, marital status, or chronic conditions. In other words, those who still dream live longer and better. But what does it mean to dream after 70? It's not about grand achievements, medals, or trips around the world, though all of that is still possible. Dreaming at this stage of life can be as simple as learning to paint, writing a memoir, planting a garden, or finally taking that course that was always put off. It can be about reconnecting with someone, forgiving an old wound, teaching something to a grandchild. Dreaming is allowing the soul to move, even when the body has slowed down, and that inner movement is what keeps the heart alive. Science calls this phenomenon late-life neuroplasticity. For many years it was believed that the human brain stopped developing as we aged. Today we know that even at 90, it's possible to form new neural connections, learn new skills, and change thought patterns. A Harvard University study showed that seniors who engage in cognitively challenging activities have a significantly lower risk of developing dementia. In other words, the brain doesn't retire, it just needs stimulation to keep creating. There's also an emotional dimension that can't be ignored. Dreaming is a natural antidote to depression, a condition that affects over 15% of Brazil's elderly population, according to the Ministry of Health. Having a project, no matter how small, gives meaning to each day. It takes the focus off pain and gives back a sense of direction. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. It may not illuminate everything, but it changes the atmosphere completely. The World Health Organization states that subjective well-being, the feeling of living a meaningful life, is one of the greatest indicators of health in old age, surpassing even some physical health markers. And it's not just the mind that benefits. When a senior begins to dream again, the body responds. Cortisol levels, the stress hormone, go down. Immunity improves. Sleep becomes more restful, and the expression changes. Those who work in long-term elder care see this phenomenon every day. Seniors who are given a goal, no matter how symbolic, start walking with more confidence, eating better, socializing more. The body follows the heart. So if you're watching this video at 70, 80, or 90, and you feel like life's spark has gone out, know that it's only asleep, and that the first step to reigniting it isn't about making a revolution, but simply allowing yourself to dream again. To ask yourself once more, what would make me happy right now? Without fear of looking foolish, without thinking it's too late. Because the truth is, it's never too late. There are countless stories of elders who truly started living after they retired, who opened businesses, got married again, traveled, danced, reinvented themselves, and every one of those stories started with the same decision: not letting time steal their dreams. Because time, my friend, steals nothing. It only hides. And it's up to you to go to that forgotten corner of your soul, brush the dust off your old desires and say, I'm still here, and I still have so much life to live. Hope is not a luxury reserved for the naive. In truth, it's a survival strategy, one of the most powerful there is. And in old age, when so many certainties have already dissolved, when the body begins to show its limits, and society insists on treating the elderly as if they've already given all they had, keeping hope alive becomes almost an act of resistance. More than that, it's a remedy, literally. Science is increasingly showing that the simple act of expecting something good from the future has real effects on the mental, physical, and emotional health of those who age. Our study from Yale University, led by psychologist Becca Levy, followed hundreds of older adults in the United States for decades and reached a surprising conclusion. People who had a positive view of aging lived, on average, 7.5 years longer than those with a negative perspective, even after controlling for factors such as high blood pressure, diabetes, medical history, and social class. 7.5 years. All because they believed life could still surprise them, that there was still meaning in moving forward. This isn't blind optimism. It's neuroscience. It's the physiology of emotion. When you believe the future holds good things, your brain lowers the production of cortisol and adrenaline, two hormones directly linked to chronic stress and premature aging. At the same time, it increases the release of dopamine and serotonin, neurotransmitters responsible for well-being, pleasure, and motivation. This improves sleep, digestion, cardiovascular function, and even immune system response. In other words, those who cultivate hope get sick less often and recover more quickly when they do. This phenomenon is so well documented that it has become the foundation for clinical interventions. The field of positive psychology, founded by Martin Seligman, proposes that nurturing positive emotions like gratitude, hope, and compassion is just as important as treating negative symptoms. For seniors, this becomes especially relevant as it helps prevent the sense of uselessness that many experience after retirement, the loss of loved ones, or physical limitations. Having something to look forward to, a visit, a reunion, a new hobby, a class, keeps the mind engaged. And that keeps the brain healthy. Hope doesn't mean denying problems, it means choosing to look beyond them. And this can be trained. A study published in Psychological Science found that simple practices such as writing gratitude letters, listing things to be thankful for at the end of the day, or vividly imagining a desirable future are enough to change brain patterns associated with depression and anxiety. And the most beautiful part, there's no age limit to start. The brain is plastic. It adapts, reshapes, and responds, even at 90. In the eyes of modern medicine, optimism has gone from being a personality trait to a true, protective health factor. And there's something deeply transformative about that, because it restores to the elderly the awareness that they are not just aging bodies, but minds capable of generating health through the way they perceive life. Thoughts are like seeds. What you plant in your mind blooms in your body. And that's not a metaphor, it's biology. How many times have you heard someone say a person's heart went out after they lost the will to live? That's not just a figure of speech. There's a direct link between lack of purpose, hopelessness, and early mortality. On the other hand, people who find meaning even in small things, a coffee with a friend, sunlight on the porch, a story told to a grandchild, activate brain regions associated with survival and longevity. It's as if the body itself says, it's still worth staying. That's why in old age, nurturing hope isn't just emotional relief. It's a holistic act of self-care. It means feeding the soul with images of the future, even if modest ones. It means believing that tomorrow can be just a little better than today, and that yes, you still have power over your life. You can still begin again. You can still love, learn, teach, smile. And that in itself is a kind of medicine you won't find in a pharmacy, but it heals, strengthens, and transforms. So the next time someone asks whether it's still worth making plans after 70, smile with quiet confidence and say, that's exactly why I keep living. Because where there is hope, there is health. Where there is health, there is movement. And where there is movement, there is life. There's a kind of sadness that begins slowly. It settles in quietly, hidden among silent days, overly comfortable chairs, and the false belief that resting is the same as living in peace. And then, before you realize it, the body has shrunk, the breath has shortened, the muscles have lost their strength, and the world feels too small to inspire even a single step. It's at this point that many believe aging is a sentence. But the truth, revealed by scientific studies across the world, is that the body, even after 70, 80, or 90, still holds an ancestral strength. And when it starts to move again, something deep and almost magical happens. Life begins to move along with it. Physical movement is one of the most powerful stimuli for mental and emotional well-being at any stage of life, but it plays an even more transformative role in old age. That's because, yes, the body ages, but it also responds with gratitude when called back into action. According to the World Health Organization, seniors who engage in regular physical activity have up to a 40% lower risk of developing cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, depression, and certain types of cancer. But it's not just about avoiding illness. It's about living with more energy, more lightness, and more freedom. In a study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, researchers followed over 3,000 seniors for more than 8 years and found that those who remained physically active had better cognitive health, lower risk of mental decline, and greater satisfaction with life. The data shows that even light walks, 30 minutes a day, are enough to bring about significant changes in mood, appetite, sleep, and overall outlook. And the most curious part, it doesn't matter how long someone has been sedentary, the body always responds. Always. Even if slowly, even if with limits. The body is thankful for movement. But why does this happen? Because physical activity releases endorphins, natural chemicals that act as painkillers, boosting mood and reducing the perception of discomfort. It also stimulates the production of dopamine and serotonin, neurotransmitters directly tied to pleasure, motivation, and self-esteem. For older adults, this is especially important, as many face grief, loneliness, loss of professional identity, or the sense of uselessness that often follows retirement. Moving the body reignites an internal flame that says, "I still can." More than just physical health, movement offers autonomy. And autonomy in later life is synonymous with dignity. The ability to walk to the bakery, climb a step, shower independently, carry a grocery bag, or hug someone with strength. These may seem like small gestures, but they restore a sense of freedom, and freedom reignites the passion for life. A study from the University of São Paulo showed that seniors with greater functional autonomy displayed fewer symptoms of depression, higher self-esteem, and better social relationships. It's as if the body tells the mind, "I've got this. You can trust me." And no, it doesn't require joining a gym or running marathons. The beauty of movement lies in its simplicity. Walking outdoors, gardening, ballroom dancing, water aerobics, adapted yoga, gentle stretching, playing with grandchildren, or even tidying the house while listening to music are all valuable ways to stay active. The secret is consistency, not intensity. Small movements, repeated daily, create an inner revolution that reflects in posture, mood, skin, breathing, and even in the sparkle in one's eyes. Movement also reconnects seniors with the world. A walk in the park allows for reunions. A dance class becomes a stage for laughter. Morning stretches turn into a self-care ritual, and slowly the day gains structure, the body finds rhythm, the mind finds focus. It's as if movement clears away the heavy fog that a sedentary lifestyle tends to spread around those who age. Each step becomes a clear message: I am still here, present, active, involved. Physical vitality, after all, isn't a privilege reserved for a few. It's a possibility for all. And unlike what many think, movement doesn't wait for motivation. It brings motivation back. Because a moving body doesn't just live, it calls life back in. And when that happens, when an older person realizes they can still move with strength, even if slowly, something within them shifts. Confidence grows, sadness retreats, fear shrinks, and in place of apathy, a quiet desire to keep going is born, to live more, to live better. Because those who move set themselves free, and those who set themselves free begin to dream again. There is a silent, almost imperceptible moment when the body begins to give up before the soul does. And often it starts with food. When appetite becomes lazy, when meals lose their color, when flavors stop throwing a celebration. It's not just about physiological aging, it's a deep reflection of how we feel about life itself. What few realize is that the path back to vitality can and should begin with the plate. Science confirms food is one of the most powerful tools not only to restore physical health, but also to rekindle mental clarity, emotional balance, and the simple joy of being alive. Eating well in later life is not just a matter of nutrition, it's a declaration of self-love. Studies in geriatric nutrition have shown that diets rich in vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, fish, and healthy fats are associated with lower rates of depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. Among them, the Mediterranean diet. stands out as one of the most effective for promoting longevity and mental health. In a study of over 11,000 participants published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, adherence to the Mediterranean diet was associated with up to a 30% reduction in the risk of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Why does this happen? Because the brain, while it does age, still needs the same fuels it always did, just with more care, more attention, and more awareness. Foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, such as deep-water fish, chia, and flaxseed, vitamin B12 folic acid, vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, and natural antioxidants have a direct impact on dopamine and serotonin levels, neurotransmitters responsible for motivation, pleasure, energy, and emotional stability. In other words, a colorful, well-balanced plate can be more effective in preventing sadness and fatigue than many medications. In older age, food is also tied to emotional memory. The smell of freshly cooked rice, the seasoning of beans, the aroma of coffee that brings back youth. Eating well isn't just about chewing nutrients. It's about revisiting stories, reliving moments, and sharing affection. A study from Boston University showed that older adults who engage in preparing their own meals, especially with natural ingredients, experience higher self-esteem, feel more useful, and report better quality of life. Cooking becomes a therapeutic ritual, and sharing a meal is a powerful act of human connection. There's also the role of food in silent inflammation, one of the main risk factors for chronic illnesses and mental disorders in old age. Excessive consumption of refined sugars, ultra-processed foods, trans fats, and too much salt can worsen fatigue, lethargy, and depressive moods. On the other hand, an anti-inflammatory diet, rich in dark leafy greens, turmeric, olive oil, nuts, berries, and herbal teas, helps reduce inflammatory markers in the blood, supporting a clearer brain, a more regulated gut, and a stronger heart. Speaking of the gut, science now recognizes the direct link between gut health and emotional well-being, the so-called gut-brain axis. Studies show that a balanced microbiome influences serotonin production, the neurotransmitter of well-being, most of which is produced in the gut. Fermented foods like kefir, plain yogurt, kombucha, and fiber-rich fruits, vegetables, and grains help maintain this healthy gut flora, which directly affects emotional stability and mental clarity in older adults. More than a natural remedy, food is also a tool for reconnecting with the present. Eating mindfully, savoring each bite, breathing between spoonfuls, noticing textures, and expressing gratitude turns a meal into meditation. Little by little, this teaches the body to slow down, to digest better, to absorb what nourishes and let go of what weighs it down. This kind of food awareness reduces binge eating, improves digestion, eases bloating, improves sleep, and supports emotional regulation, something incredibly valuable in later life. And even for those who believe it's too late to change how they eat, surprises await. There's no need to overhaul the pantry overnight. All it takes is one swap. Soda for fresh juice, margarine for olive oil, white rice for brown, cookies for a banana. Each choice is a seed, and the body, even tired, still blooms when nourished with love, color, and vitality. So, if life feels flavorless, maybe it's time to start with your plate, because eating well is a revolutionary act of care. It's saying to your body, I still care about you. And when the body hears that, it responds with more energy, more health, more presence, and most of all, with more desire to keep going. Loneliness in old age is a silent pain that many prefer to hide. It doesn't scream, it doesn't bleed, it doesn't break bones, but it eats away from the inside, day after day, eroding the will to get up, dulling the appetite, and making time feel like a burden too heavy to carry alone. An elderly person who finds themselves isolated slowly begins to believe they no longer belong to the world, that their voice doesn't matter, that their presence is dispensable. And that's when life starts to lose its color. But there is a force strong enough to reverse this, just as powerful as any medical treatment: human connection. Science is clear. Meaningful social relationships are among the greatest predictors of longevity, emotional health, and quality of life. A landmark study from Harvard University, launched in 1938 and still ongoing, followed over 700 people for more than 8 decades and found that the greatest source of happiness and health in later life wasn't wealth, fame, or success, but good relationships. Connection with others protects the brain, strengthens the immune system, lowers the risk of heart disease, and significantly reduces the chances of depression and dementia. It's important to understand that it's not about the number of friends or how often someone visits, but about the quality of presence. A single true connection, a friend, a neighbor, a grandchild, a caring caregiver, is enough to reignite the spark of life. The touch of a hand, a listening gaze without judgment, a shared memory, a spontaneous laugh. These are powerful antidotes to despair. Research from the US, National Institute on Aging, shows that seniors who maintain active social lives have about 70% lower risks of early cognitive decline. To connect with others is also to remain active in the world. Talking, listening, debating, playing, teaching, learning, it all requires the brain, heart, and emotions to work together. Every interaction is like a little gym for body and soul, and this applies not only to old friendships. Making new friends later in life is one of the most effective ways to restore energy and vitality. Dance groups, cultural workshops, language classes, religious gatherings, volunteering. These are open doors to encounters that can change a day or a lifetime. There is also a deep psychological benefit to feeling unneeded. Many older adults struggle with the pain of feeling discarded after retirement or the loss of loved ones. But when they realize they can still help, advise, nurture, teach, protect, they are reborn. The theory of generativity, developed by psychologist Erik Erikson, suggests that in old age, people seek to leave a legacy and contribute to something greater than themselves. And when that happens, they feel alive, respected, and at peace with their story. On the other hand, chronic social isolation is associated with a 29% higher risk of death, according to the Public Library of Science. The absence of human bonds leads to sedentary behavior, overuse of medications, appetite loss, and worsening of depressive symptoms. A body without love gets sick. A mind without a listener goes silent. An emotion without exchange shuts down. That's why fostering relationships is not a luxury, it's a public health necessity. And more than that, it's a fundamental human need. For those who have lived in isolation for a long time, the idea of starting over can feel overwhelming. But it all begins with a small gesture, a good morning to the neighbor, a phone call to a distant relative, a walk in the park where others gather, an invitation to play cards, a new family WhatsApp group. Every small bridge laid is a step on the staircase of reconnection, and as those ties begin to form, the elder discovers they still belong to the world, that their presence matters, that their care is irreplaceable. Relationships are also the best emotional shield against life's inevitable losses. When we have someone to share pain with, it becomes lighter. When we have someone to celebrate with, joy becomes stronger. This emotional foundation is what helps us keep going. Despite loss, illness, or physical limitations, human connection is, ultimately, the thread that weaves dignity into old age. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all this is realizing it's never too late to reconnect. Because the heart doesn't age. It only waits patiently for the moment it can be touched again. And when that happens, when an older person feels seen, heard, loved, they come back to life, fully, and they begin to dream again, with the lightness of someone who has finally understood. In the end, to live is to be with someone. There's a secret few talk about when it comes to aging. The body may slow down, but the soul only falls asleep if it is forgotten. And one of the most powerful ways to awaken it, with strength, sparkle, and meaning, is through dreams. Yes, dreams. The ones many believe belong only to the young, to the early chapters of life, to the future yet to come. But dreaming, contrary to popular belief, is not a matter of age. It's a matter of being human. And those who dream, regardless of how many birthdays they've celebrated, keep alive the most vital spark of existence, the will to go on. Science has shown that having goals, even simple ones, is one of the greatest protective factors against emotional, cognitive, and even physical illness in old age. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology followed seniors for over 10 years and concluded that those who had clear life goals experienced lower levels of stress, depression, cognitive decline, and early mortality. In this context, dreaming is not a luxury, it's a biological necessity. But what does it mean to have goals after 70? It doesn't have to be climbing mountains or learning a new language in 6 months. Sometimes dreaming means walking every day without pain, writing 1 letter a week, learning to play a song, planting a garden, visiting a place you've always wanted to see, being present at a great-grandchild's birthday, volunteering your time to a cause. Small goals are just as effective as grand ones. The important thing is that they matter to the heart that holds them. This sense of purpose activates deep mechanisms in the brain. When we visualize a goal, the nervous system releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation and pleasure. And the most amazing part, the body doesn't distinguish between big and small dreams in terms of chemical impact. A simple personal project, like sewing a quilt for someone special or organizing a family photo album, can produce the same biochemical response as major professional achievements, which means every dream matters as long as it's genuine. The Sachs self-determination theory, widely studied in contemporary psychology, states that human beings need 3 core elements to feel fulfilled: autonomy, competence, and connection, and all 3 can be nurtured through goals. Having something to accomplish promotes autonomy. It gives meaning to daily life. Feeling capable of achieving something strengthens competence and builds self-esteem. And sharing goals with others, whether by talking about them or pursuing them together, creates connection. It's a virtuous cycle that fuels emotional vitality. In practical terms, an elder who dreams is more organized, more enthusiastic, more present. They have a reason to get up, something to focus on, someone to look forward to seeing, and that fills the gaps that time alone cannot. Without goals, days stretch too long and feel too empty. With goals, each hour has purpose, each week has direction, and time, instead of being a burden, becomes an ally. It's also important to recognize that dreams in later life often carry a different flavor. They're not driven by ambition or vanity, but by meaning. They come from accumulated wisdom, from silence well understood, from nostalgia that's been lived through, and because of that, they are even more powerful. Because they don't just aim to achieve, they aim to express who someone truly is. The elder who dreams reconciles with their own story. They rewrite chapters, they close cycles, they open new ones, and they allow themselves, once again, to be the protagonist of their life. Dreaming also helps process loss. When there is something to build, even something small, the absence of a loved one doesn't paralyze. Pain finds a place to be expressed. Grief becomes creation, longing becomes a bridge, and lost love becomes a living legacy. Some older adults start painting after losing a spouse. Others begin telling stories in public schools. Some go back to school, each with their own dream, each finding their own healing. And if you're here today watching this video, perhaps with teary eyes, wondering if it's still worth having a dream, the answer is yes, it is. Not because the world expects it of you, but because you deserve it. Because inside you, there are still desires that haven't aged. And every new dream you choose to cultivate is a reminder that life, even with its wrinkles and scars, still pulses within you with strength and beauty. Dreaming is good. It makes life better. And maybe right now your body is just waiting for you to say, I still want to. And that simple wanting could be the start of a new kind of youth. The kind that doesn't depend on age, but on the courage to believe that it's always time to begin again. There's a kind of freedom that few truly value until the day it begins to slip away. The freedom to get up by yourself, choose your own clothes, make your breakfast, walk to the gate, and decide what to do with your time. Small gestures that seem routine to many become, in old age, symbols of something much greater: autonomy. And when an older adult begins to lose that autonomy, it's not just the body that suffers. The mind, the heart, the spirit, everything begins to fade. That's why taking care of the body is not just a physical matter. It's a direct bridge to emotional and mental freedom. Studies show that maintaining functional independence is one of the most important factors for mental health in older adults. According to research published in the Journal of Aging and Health, seniors who are more capable of performing daily activities, like dressing, cooking, bathing, or walking alone, show significantly fewer symptoms of depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. In other words, those who can care for themselves even partially live with more self-esteem, clarity, and dignity. But this isn't some unreachable ideal. Autonomy can be strengthened, regained, and preserved through daily actions. Adapted physical exercises, physiotherapy, proper nutrition, cognitive stimulation, and above all, the continuous encouragement of the elderly as protagonists of their own lives are all proven tools for keeping the body active and with it, the mind awake. When an older person is encouraged to do what they still can, even if slower or with adjustments, they feel valued, and that feeling has a tremendous impact on psychological health. Preventive physiotherapy, for example, is gaining recognition for this very reason. It doesn't wait for pain to appear or for limitation to set in. It acts beforehand, strengthening muscles, improving balance, increasing range of motion, and preventing falls, one of the leading causes of loss of autonomy in old age. According to the Brazilian Society of Geriatrics and Gerontology, about 30% of people over 65 experience falls each year, many of which could be prevented with muscle strengthening and motor re-education. Nutrition also plays a critical role. A well-nourished body responds better to stimuli, recovers more quickly, and maintains more energy for daily tasks. Common deficiencies in older adults, such as vitamin D, calcium, B12, iron, and protein, directly affect physical and cognitive performance, increasing the risk of muscle weakness, dizziness, mental confusion, and apathy. And all of this impacts one's ability or inability to live independently. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of autonomy, though, is the emotional one. When someone begins doing everything for an elderly person, even with the best of intentions, they may unknowingly send the message that the person is incapable. That undermines self-confidence. It creates fear. It causes withdrawal. That's why support must always come with its respect for individuality. Ask before helping. Encourage small decisions. Celebrate daily accomplishments. Acknowledge what was done with effort. All of this strengthens one's sense of control over their own life, something essential for good mental health. It's also important to understand that autonomy isn't absolute. It exists in degrees across different areas. An elder may need help bathing, but still manage their finances. They might walk with a cane, but cook their own meals. What matters is that they have space to make choices, because that's what preserves identity. And those who keep their sense of self active also keep the mind sharper, the memory clearer, and their mood more balanced. Some studies even show that seniors with greater autonomy report higher levels of life satisfaction and lower levels of chronic pain. This shows that when the mind feels in control, it can better withstand challenges. And that control begins with small daily victories, tying your own shoes, choosing what to wear, remembering a phone number, applying lotion to your legs, tending to a plant, deciding the day's menu. All of this is therapeutic. So, taking care of your body with love isn't just a health routine. It's a silent declaration of independence. It's saying to yourself and to the world, I'm still here, I still can, I still want to. And that certainty, that strength born from small triumphs, reignites the passion for living. Because autonomy is truly one of the greatest medicines of aging. And thankfully, it's a medicine that can be nurtured every single day. There comes a time in life when material achievements no longer hold the same allure. Time teaches, gently or harshly, that possessions fade, titles vanish, and certainties dissolve. And it is often then that people begin to look inward, not as an escape, but as a reunion. Spirituality, long mistaken for obligatory religiosity, reveals itself as an intimate refuge, a bridge between who we are and what we still seek. And walking quietly beside it is gratitude, a daily practice of recognizing the value of what remains. Together, spirituality and gratitude form one of the most powerful pillars of mental and emotional health in later life. Science is increasingly recognizing the impact of these two practices on human well-being. Research from the University of California, for example, shows that people with active spiritual lives have a lower risk of depression, reduced stress levels, greater resilience in the face of pain, and even a significant boost in immune function. And this effect does not depend on any specific religion. It's about a state of connection to something greater, whether that's God, the universe, nature, or simply the meaning of life. When nurtured with freedom and authenticity, spirituality gives older adults a safe space to deal with loss, grief, and change. It creates a symbolic horizon where pain can become learning, where the past is not just memory, but legacy. A study published in the Journal of Palliative Medicine found that seniors who engage in regular spiritual practices experience less fear of death, greater acceptance of physical limitations, and better quality of life, even in delicate health conditions. That's because spirituality offers something medicine cannot: meaning. Gratitude, in turn, acts as a balm against resentment, guilt, and regret, emotions that often haunt old age. The act of giving thanks, even in difficult moments, rewires the brain. Neuroimaging studies show that people who regularly write about things they're grateful for activate regions of the brain related to empathy, decision-making, and emotional regulation. Gratitude changes the way we interpret the world, and that alone changes how we feel in it. In practice, cultivating spirituality can be as simple as meditating for 5 minutes in the morning, saying a quiet prayer upon waking, lighting a candle in memory of someone dear, reading inspirational texts, joining a reflection group, or simply gazing at the sky at sunset. What matters is that the practice feels true to the person's inner self. When done with authenticity, it becomes a foundation of peace. And gratitude can be practiced through small but powerful gestures, writing down 3 things to be thankful for at the end of the day, recalling a personal victory, silently giving thanks before a meal, looking at an old photo with affection instead of bitter longing, appreciating a body that still moves, eyes that still see, ears that still hear, and memories that still endure. Every act of gratitude is a way of telling life, I see your worth, even after all I've lived through. More and more mental health professionals are incorporating these practices into elder care. Psychologists, occupational therapists, caregivers, and doctors are discovering that spirituality and gratitude increase treatment adherence, improve mood, reduce feelings of loneliness, and elevate perceived quality of life. And the most beautiful part, these practices require no money, no physical strength, no youth. They come from awareness, and they are available anytime to anyone willing to connect with what truly matters. In old age, spirituality matures. It sheds dogmas, guilt, and impositions. It becomes light, subtle, deep. It's a moment when, looking back, the elder sees that the most valuable things weren't what they earned, but what they learned to feel, what they chose to forgive, what they accepted with serenity. And this gaze, grateful and at peace, not only heals the past, it illuminates the present. Because when the soul finds peace, the body rests. When the heart gives thanks, the mind clears. And when the elder feels connected to something greater, even if they can't name it, they rediscover their light. Not the spotlight's shine, but the quiet glow that lives in the eyes of those who, despite the marks of time, can still say, life was worth it, and still is. For decades, people believed the human brain was like an old machine, born with a limited number of parts that over time would wear out until they stopped working. This belief passed through generations, feeding the fear of forgetfulness, dementia, the rusty mind, especially among older adults. But modern neuroscience has brought a surprising and liberating revelation. The brain never stops changing. Even at 80, 90, or 100 years old, it can adapt, learn, and reinvent itself. The name of this phenomenon, neuroplasticity, and it's what makes starting over possible and powerful at any stage of life. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new connections between neurons, strengthen existing circuits, and even generate new neurons, especially in the hippocampus, the area responsible for memory and learning. For a long time, this ability was thought to belong only to childhood and youth. However, studies from Columbia University and the University of London have shown that seniors who engage in cognitively challenging activities like learning something new, practicing hobbies, playing instruments, or using technology experience significant improvement in memory, reasoning, and even self-esteem. This means that aging doesn't have to be synonymous with intellectual decline. On the contrary, it can be a phase of mental growth, discovery, and inner expansion. When an older person decides to learn something new, no matter what it is, whether it's sewing, gardening, photography, computers, writing, dancing, or languages, they're not just gaining a skill, they're sending a powerful message to the brain. I'm still alive and willing. That message has real effects on emotional and cognitive health. More than an academic concept, neuroplasticity is a real chance to begin again. Science shows that even in brains with early signs of Alzheimer's or other dementias, regular cognitive activity can slow disease progression and preserve essential functions for much longer. It's as if the mind says, if you use me, I stay. And that changes everything about how we view aging. But learning doesn't have to be hard. Often it's the small challenges that keep the brain sharp. Completing a puzzle, doing crosswords, taking a new walking route, trying a new recipe, watching a documentary, writing letters, labeling old photos, recording messages for the grandchildren, exploring a new app. Each new synapse is like a tiny spark that reignites inner vitality. And when these sparks accumulate, they become a flame of enthusiasm. Continuous learning also reinforces identity. Many older adults face a crisis of purpose after retirement, especially those whose identity was closely tied to their profession. By learning something new, the elder creates a new self, broader, freer. They discover they're still capable of surprising themselves, something deeply motivating and healing. A study by the American Psychological Association showed that older adults who keep their minds active with new knowledge report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction. Another essential point is the link between learning and socialization. Classes, workshops, and cultural activities are places where new friendships are born, where experiences are exchanged, and where bonds are formed that strengthen not only the brain, but the heart as well. In study groups, for example, it's common to see formerly isolated seniors regaining self-esteem, joy, and a sense of belonging. Learning in a group is learning to live with more connection. And for those who feel fear, insecurity, or think it's too late, the answer lies in living examples. Thousands of seniors who learned to read at 70, graduated college at 80, wrote their first books at 90. They proved that the brain doesn't respect calendars. It responds to stimulation, desire, repetition, and care. And when it receives that, it responds with generosity. Starting over, then, isn't a privilege of youth. It's a choice made with courage. And that courage already lives within you, waiting for a call. Maybe it's a forgotten book on a shelf, an instrument stored away, a course you always wanted to take but never had time for. Maybe it's the desire to tell your story, or to hear someone else's. What matters is beginning, because when the brain begins to learn again, life begins to pulse again. And time, once slow and heavy, suddenly feels too short for all the possibilities ahead. Yes, the brain never retires. And if you let it, it can, starting today, open the doors to a new chapter in your story. For a long time, we were taught that old age marked the end of the road, that after 70, 80, or 90, there was nothing left but waiting. Waiting for the body to fail, waiting for memories to fade, waiting for time to pass slowly as if no more achievements were possible. But that outdated and cold vision doesn't stand against the strength of those who've chosen to live the final part of life as the most intense, lightest, most conscious, and most meaningful phase of all. And science, alongside real-life stories of those who dared to start over, proves it. The final years can indeed be the best. Living well in old age is not a fantasy. It's a reality for those who choose to exchange the weight of loss for the value of experience. A study conducted by Stanford University showed that, contrary to what many believe, life satisfaction actually increases with age. People over 70 report higher levels of inner peace, gratitude, acceptance, and even joy, even when facing illness or physical limitations. That's because older adults, more than anyone, understand the preciousness of time. Each sunrise is no longer automatic. It becomes a celebration. And there is something deeply beautiful in realizing this, the emotional freedom that only maturity can bring. At 20, you care too much about what others think. At 30, you chase stability. At 40, you struggle to manage it all. At 50, you start questioning. But only after 60, 70, 80, do you finally allow yourself to be whole. No masks, no rush, no fear in saying no to what hurts and yes to what nourishes. That is lived wisdom. That is the true luxury of life. This stage is also, quite curiously, one of the most creative phases of life. Many artists, writers, inventors, and leaders made their greatest contributions after 60, not because they were geniuses, but because they had life experience. And more than that, they had time and courage to be authentic. They no longer had to prove anything to anyone. They simply needed to express what had always lived inside them. And this is true for all of us. It's never too late to paint, write, tell stories, dance, plant, love, or laugh out loud. Life, when lived with awareness, becomes a work of art. And every wrinkle, every scar, is a unique brushstroke on that canvas. This final part of life can also be a time of reconciliation with others, with your own story, with old dreams left behind. It's time to forgive, to let go of what weighs you down, to embrace affection with more presence, to listen with more calm, to offer words that heal. It's a moment when, even in the face of loss, elders understand that love does not die. It simply changes form, but lives on in those who remain. This brings an invisible strength, a quiet peace, a joy that doesn't scream, but gently fills the heart. Biologically, the brain adapts to this new phase. The heart, when well cared for, keeps beating strong. The body, when moved with affection, responds. The mind, when stimulated, stays agile. And the soul, it never ages. It only waits to be seen again. Modern medicine now recognizes that healthy aging depends on 5 key factors: mindful nutrition, gentle and consistent physical activity, emotional connections, mental stimulation, and a sense of purpose. All of this is within reach. It's not a distant ideal, it's a real path. And if you still have doubts, ask yourself, how many more stories can you live? How many lives can you still touch with your presence? How many beautiful memories can you begin creating today? It doesn't matter what age is on your ID. What matters is how much life still pulses inside you. And it pulses, it calls, it urges. So declare it to yourself. My best chapter begins now. Because there are no rules about when joy must end. Because love has no expiration date. Because clarity can bloom even after many storms. And because every second we still have is a chance to make time, not a thief of dreams, but a partner in building a simpler, truer, and happier life. Yes, the final part of life can be the most beautiful. Not because it's perfect, but because it's lived with a clean heart, attentive eyes, and a soul ready to give thanks for everything that was, and everything that still can be.